Welcome everyone to CDO's Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada, working with the CDO Magazine. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Esther Munyi, who is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Sasfin. Welcome, Esther.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you for having me.
A topic that is pretty much, key to any organization is the change management and organizational change management and data literacy. So we're going to ask you, from your background, what would be some of the examples of successful change management initiatives that you believe are critical for an organization to get right?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, if I really look back, and I think it's really been I can say a lesson learned for me. It's been a lesson that I've had to learn painfully, but it's been an important lesson. And with successful change management to occur, you need your senior management, including your board executives, support.
Right.
It must be top-down led. It's upward-led. I think agendas work, but not always. And I think it's always important to get your decision makers to be supportive of the agenda you're trying to bring. And I think the most difficult thing to do, in my opinion, is often we talk about making data-driven decisions, but that requires a huge shift in the mindset and the behaviors of the decision makers. If you think about decision makers and the persona of those decision makers, a lot of them for years have been making decisions using their experiences and their gut feelings and it's been working. And now we're saying to them, well, we want you to shift that. We want you to change how you've been making decisions. That is a huge thing to ask of them. So look, I'm not saying they move away from using their experiences and their gut feelings, but it's saying, how do you back those decisions that they've made with their gut feeling with real insights in order to give them real, competitive advantage? It's really saying, how do we uplift that? And convincing decision makers to do that can be really difficult. They often can agree with you in they say they agree that this is what we need to do, but actually shifting behavior is the psychology on its own. It's a whole different ball game, in my opinion. So it's important for me to always get is not to try and to convince everybody. Right. I don't think I don't think it's possible. I think it's important to do it bit by bit. Focus on the things that will be most impactful. Look at the business outcome that will be the most beneficial using data and focus on that, and not trying to convince everybody in the room. And also the other thing is, we often say that data is an asset. Well, to who? Who is it an asset to? If you go to an organization and you say, well, data is an asset. Why is it an asset? How does it benefit you? A lot of people are not able to articulate that. Not everyone understands that notion. I mean, if it's an asset, why is it not sitting in the balance sheets, of most organizations? So it's important to also focus on what I call the crown jewels of the business, the critical data elements that business really does see as important. And if you can determine what that data is and what critical data is to the organization, and focus on improving that data and making that data and leveraging off that data for decision making, then it's a win. And the other thing is, the culture of the organization must be adaptive. And this can be done through a number of ways, a number of initiatives, but it's very important that you also focus on the culture. And like I said, the first thing is it has to come from the leaders of the organization. And then you can formalize it through other initiatives, like you can establish a center of data excellence. We've been very successful in doing that. We have a data and analytics center of excellence where we get data practitioners, knowledge workers, data enthusiasts together, and we talk about all things data. How do we solve problems using data? How do we leverage ideas, and how do we make sure that we understand and align around what we call data and analytics? So it's really been going really well, and also through a data literacy program. And that's a whole different conversation around data literacy, because there's different schools of thought on that. But the other thing I think people don't realize works really well is data governance policies and standards can help you enforce and formalize certain changes in the organization.
Right.
Because people understand, compliance, and they understand we must adhere to regulations, we must adhere to legislation. And sometimes that can be sort of like your entryway to change and getting people to adapt to certain standards. So I also often say that don't shy away from the regulators and what they're trying to achieve around ensuring that our data is used ethically. Yeah.
Esther, just jump into data governance, because you bring it up there, and I will go back to data literacy, but in the space of data governance and quality, but data governance, quality, and risk management, they all kind of go together. From your point of view, what have you seen as the biggest challenges that organizations face when they're coming to creating, implementing, or updating their data governance programs?
How much time do you have?
Yeah. Probably not enough, but it is something that is a key point. It's interesting, from where the topics that you've discussed already, I think that the maturity level of an organization would obviously play into that. And you mentioned, not only the policies around the regulations and compliance, but from your point of view, what are kind of some of the high level challenges that you kind of say, yeah, these are, and maybe looking at from your point of view, but also from maybe a international view as well? We'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that.
Sure. Interesting enough, one topic, I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and something came up around AI ethics, right? Artificial intelligence ethics, and also just data governance ethics. And what came out very loudly is that, when it comes to data and analytics, or when it comes to AI, there's not really like a universal or body that governs the ethical practices of data and analytics and AI and all of that. I mean, if you look at doctors, lawyers, accountants, there's some formal body in that country or in that industry that sort of creates that, creates that oversight over what we do, right? So I think for me, one of the key challenges is around the bias and ethical practices of data.
Yeah.
And normally this is not because of people have, obscene agendas. I think it's really because not all stakeholders have a shared vision or goal, when it comes to analytics. There are people that have very different agendas because they have very different mandates or responsibilities.
Right.
So what happens with data governance is that you tend to be pulled in different directions. And getting everyone on the same page, it's like pulling teeth. but once you do it, the rest becomes so easy to maneuver. So a big lesson for me has to, it's focusing, like I mentioned earlier, on business outcomes that matter the most. If you can get everybody to agree that these are the key business objectives and these are the things that we need to focus on, and you can get everybody to agree to that, then, my CEO often says, Michael Sassoon, to me, that Esther, you cannot be everything to everyone,
right?
But you can be everything to some. So it's just identifying what that sum is. What are those critical things that we need to focus on as a business? And how do we get everybody to agree on those items and then focus on that? So that's been really, really helpful. Then the second thing is around poor data literacy, and I think we'll talk about that shortly. But in my experience, it's not really always about the literacy levels of the business that's the issue, or the business users, or the knowledge workers, or the data teams. It's about the change management resistance. It's a resistance to the change. And this is often due to fear of the unknown. People don't really understand what, with data and analytics, what does it mean to the job security? What does it mean when you come and you say, well, we're automating and we are automating your report creation, when that was all maybe a person was doing, and there's often that fear. And so it's always important to overcome that through demystifying the change that data brings, or what data governance is. The other thing I've realized, yes, Robert?
No, I was going to say, I love the fact that demystifying the world around how automation is not going to eliminate your job, but it's going to free you up to be more beneficial to the organization and a higher level of output from you. So we take the mundane, repetitive stuff away, but we let you become more of a value add to the organization. I love that key point. But continue on, Esther.
No, correct. You're spot on. The other challenge I'm finding is, data can be really isolated. The people have data silos and data islands all over the place. There's not really a consistent approach in how you see data, define data, use data. There's lack of consensus on defining the data, and that becomes very difficult to maneuver if everybody sees the same data element in very different perspectives. And there's nothing wrong with seeing data in different perspectives. What is wrong is if that is not understood, that is not defined and approved across the business. So it is important that we all speak in the same language, data is used in a very consistent manner, and this can really reduce, duplication of effort and rework, because that's what tends to happen when you have silos, when you have data islands, is that you tend to have data that's used, you don't have a single source of truth. You have different outputs because people are looking at things very differently. So it's important to align. And also just understand where there are differences, because there will be differences. And also I think the last thing, and I think a very important thing, is inefficient controls. That's a huge concern when it comes to governance. Look, the resistance around controls is because it can become decapitating or strenuous, and it's inhibiting progress. I mean, I've heard people say, well, when you put all of these controls in place, what's something that would take me 5 minutes is now taking me 15 minutes. And really, it's not about inhibiting. It's about, educating and creating the awareness of why we put these controls in place. It's not about just complying to standard. It's about also educating people to the why, the so what. And people understanding that, having these controls in place are a way to protect our data. It's a way to protect our clients' privacy, protecting an organization from security breaches, protecting us from creating, incorrect data outputs. It's really important to educate people as to why we do this.
So on behalf of the CDO Magazine, we really appreciate you providing your time today. You're very gracious with giving us your knowledge. And I hope that we can get a chance to come back and share your knowledge and experience in maybe how AI has improved not only your life, but the life of the employees at Sasfin. So I'd like to just thank you for your time today.
No, thank you so much, Robert. It was a really good chat.
Well, it was a good chat. I do believe that. And for our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.